guys, it's Rachel here with Senza Tempo Cane Corso, and I'm here with Cashmere, and Preacher. He walked up to me. Hello, sugars. I wanted to address some questions that I had gotten about Cashmere and just breeding in general. I've had a bunch of people asking when Cashmere's due date is. Her due date is April 13th. Now she could go before or after that. You know, there's not an exact science to that, so just keep that in mind. We will be live streaming her birth just like we did last time. So that's fun stuff. She's looking like she'll probably have around the same number of puppies from what I can see. You know, she's typically around this size. And so anyway, so I wanted to take the time to address just some common questions about that kind of thing. I've had a bunch of people ask me, you know, how do you know if your dog is breed quality, and, you know, when should you breed your dog, and things like that. As far as breeding your dog, there are some very basic criteria that need to be met before you even consider it. First of all, you need to make sure that your dog is registered with a accredited organization. So we're talking like, you know, AKC. I think with pit bulls it was ADBA. Avoid anything like CKC, Continental Kennel Club. That's basically just a scam, or it was back whenever I was breeding pit bulls a long time ago. So anyway, so yeah, avoid that. And then you also want to make sure that you have your dog health tested. Now, the health testing that you do is going to be determined by what breed of dog you have. So every breed has things that they are susceptible to. So it's your job to educate yourself on all the different health issues that your breed can and is affected by, to ensure that you are not, you know, promoting any of that stuff by continuing to breed it into the lines. So once you have gotten all your health testing done, you know that your dog is registered, then you want to, well, I would say initially, before you even do your health testing, you really need to take a very good look at the standard and make sure that your dog is a good representation of the breed. So, you know, not every dog is. Having said that, there are, you know, exemptions to the rule. Like, for example, maybe your dog isn't like the best example of the breed, but your dog happens to have really, really good bloodlines and has really good health, and maybe the head's just not pretty enough. Kind of like Blondie, you know. A lot of people try to hate on Blondie because she has that longer muzzle. But there's lots of different ways that dogs can be incorrect. Hers is a little bit more obvious, and people like to pick on that because she presents a very easy target, because her issue is her face, and it's like right in front of your face. People whose dogs have, you know, not enough angulation, maybe they're straight through the knee, you know, there's all kinds of issues that dogs can have, and people will breed it anyway. So it's really up to the individual to decide whether or not your dog's pros outweigh the cons. It's a good idea to have a good friend that is in the community that is not kennel blind, you know what I mean? Somebody that doesn't just agree with everything you say, somebody that is actually critical. For me, that would be my friend Reese. She and I are very honest with each other. We're always making sure that we are kind of keeping each other in line. A lot of my, you know, anytime I have a question about a dog, or if I'm thinking about maybe, you know, removing a dog from my program, she's one of the people that I always ask about it. Psst, Velocity, quit. Get out of my couch if you're gonna do that. So anyway, so it's just kind of a good way to keep yourself from getting kennel blind, if that makes sense, is having somebody that you can have an honest conversation with your dogs about. And so, you know, it's a good idea to have that. So I do, you know, having said that, like with Blondie, we know her muzzle's too long, so We are breeding her to a male that has a very a correct, he's actually a little bit more hyper type. Like he has, I wouldn't say too short of a muzzle, but he does have an underbite. And so little things like that will help bring her head back in check, and her offspring will be good. There are things that Blondie has over Midnight. For example, a lot of people love Midnight, ain't got a problem with her, but she doesn't have the correct feet. Blondie has the correct feet, and the feet of this breed are very important. So, so yeah, it's less visible, but in my opinion, it's more important because the feet actually hold the dog up. The head is just pure looks. But it all depends on what kind of breeder you are. Are you the kind of breeder that cares more about a pretty face, or are you a breeder that cares more about overall structure and health? So for me, I like to try to take it all in. So having said that, if you've checked with, your good friends that you can trust, you've checked with the standard, you know that your dog is a good representation of the breed, or you've decided that in your particular case, this dog is worth adding to your program, then you go ahead and you breed that dog. Now, having said that, you're going to have to wait until the dog is old enough. Most registries have a rule on when you can breed a dog. Now, typically, if it's a breed registry, they're going to have a different rule than, say, an all breed registry like the AKC. The Cane Corso tends to go into heat a little bit later because they're a larger breed dog. So they go into heat at around a year old, and then they go into their second heat at around 16 to 18 months old. There is no registry for this breed that has a rule against breeding this breed at 16 months of age. So there's nothing wrong with that. Overall, as a general rule, like back when I was breeding pit bulls over a decade ago, it was very common to breed the dog on the second heat. That was the industry standard. Nobody bred dogs on their first heat. That was considered poor breeding practices, okay? There are some breeds that are small, like for instance, the Chinese Cresset that's bred at 9 months old because they mature much earlier because they're a smaller breed dog. So you want to make sure that your dog is old enough to be bred. It doesn't mean that you can't start looking for a stud early. Like for example, I start looking for studs way before my dogs are ready to be bred. And that's because I don't want to be looking at the last minute trying to find a good stud. I take my time, I do my research, I contact people, and I try to find the best possible stud for my female to complement any of her weaknesses, okay? So for me, like I posted up a post looking for a stud for Velocity, and maybe even Blondie and Midnight a while back, just because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't scrambling at the last minute trying to look for a stud. I've spoken with some pretty prominent breeders who have been breeding well over 20 years about using some of their studs, and that's something that we've spoken about. And when the time comes, I will use them. As many of you know, Velocity was in heat in February. We did not breed her. That was her first heat. We are waiting until her second heat, like everyone does in the business. So, which is appropriate because they're just not ready to be bred at a year old. So, keep that in mind. Whatever breed you have, you're going to need to know. Now, there's always going to be these people that believe that their way is the right way. Usually they make things up as they go along. They'll tell you that breeding an older dog is better. If that was the case, then nature would not make females go into heat at the time that they do. Okay. As a female gets older, whether it is a dog or a human, their ability to produce young gets less and less frequent. A woman in her 40s is already in fact, late 30s, she's already starting to decline in her reproductive ability. So dogs live much a shorter lifespan than us. It would make sense that they do go into heat at a much younger age. So it's just something to keep in mind. I do think that there is a limit. You don't want to breed too early, but you don't want to wait either. Of the 2 dogs that I've bred Preacher to that were older, I bred Preacher to 2 3-year-old females, and each time both of them had smaller, what I would consider to be smaller litters. They, I think the first one maybe had 5 or 6 puppies. 2 of them were very tiny, like little runt puppies, and the other one had, I think, 6 puppies, no runts. It was a good size litter as far as the health of the puppies. But the first female that had the 2 small ones actually had to have a cesarean, and that's because she was bred at 3 years of age. And we bred her again, back to back, keep that in mind. And she had, I think, what does she have? 8 puppies, all very big, very healthy, of drastic difference from her first litter. And that's because, as I've told you guys before, when you skip heats, the hormones have a very disastrous effect on the uterus. The hormone that they go through, I think it's progesterone, I always pronounce that wrong. That hormone causes a thickening of the lining of the uterus, and over time will cause cysts and will eventually lead to pyometra. And so when when both of those females were actually bred and they had the puppies, that cleaned their uterus out, okay? And so when they got pregnant again, they were able to have much more implantation and much more just a healthy uterus. So the puppies were able to thrive in that healthy environment. So contrary to popular belief, breeding back to back is better for the female. It is better for their health. That is scientifically proven. And on top of it, waiting for 3 years to breed a dog is bad. Every time you skip a heat, you're doing damage to the uterus. It may not be enough damage to destroy it completely or cause disease, but you are definitely taxing it. So, keep that in mind. So the other female, she is pregnant at this point, but they did say that she looked bigger than last time. So I'm willing to bet she's probably going to have a larger litter as well, which is pretty awesome for them because, we charge a pretty substantial stud fee, and it's nice to see that they'll at least get a return on that. And having said that, that's the litter that we took a puppy back on that one because it looked like the first litter was very good. I'm assuming the second one will be just as nice. So anyway, so you got your dog registered with a credible registry. You know that your dog is up to the standard, and you know what you have. You've got good bloodlines. Your dog has the right structure, the right type. You get the health tested. You know that that's going to work out. Then you go and you try to find a good stud. Don't just go with the cheapest stud you can find. Know what your female's faults are. There are no perfect dogs. It pays to be honest about what you have. And look for males that complement your females. You want to find a male that is strong where your female is weak. And it's also important to look through the pedigree. You're not just breeding with that male. You're going to be producing what's in his lines and also in your female's lines. So keep that in mind. If you have one dog with a short muzzle, but the whole line has long muzzles, very long muzzles, you don't want to breed to a male that has a really long muzzle because overall you're probably going to get a bunch of blondies. So, as beautiful as Blondie is, and as much as we love her, she's not the ideal. So we don't want to keep breeding for that. All right. It's important to remember. So find a good stud that is also registered with the same registry that your female is registered with. That's very important because you're not going to be able to register the puppies unless they come from the same registry. All right. Keep that in mind. So once you've done that, you're either going to take your female to the male, or you're probably going to do artificial insemination. There are things that go along with that. That's literally an entirely different video, but your breeder or the stud owner can help you decide which option is going to be the best. I would always prefer a live breeding if at all possible, but sometimes distance is just a bit too much to overcome. So it's entirely up to you. But you do want to try to find the best stud for your female. Don't just go with a big name. Don't just go with a big pedigree because it's, you want to be producing really good dogs, and you're not going to do that if you're not breeding with all of those factors in mind. Okay? So I hope that helps. Like I said, Cashmere's due on the 13th. We will live stream it, so you will get to see it. None of our dogs are bred before their second heat, so keep that in mind. And just a heads up that I don't like to spend too much time on drama or anything like that, but I have seen screenshots of a group that I am not a part of where I am being badmouthed, and there are people that support me that are on there trying to defend me. Let me just go ahead and say, don't waste your time. While I really greatly appreciate it, and it means a lot to me to see people standing up for me, ultimately, the people that are talking about me cannot be, their minds are not going to be changed. They know what they're doing. Most of them know they're lying. This isn't about, doing the right thing or being truthful. It's just about tearing people down. And I don't want you guys to be hurt or attacked in that process. The best thing to do with like most trolls is just ignore them and let it go. And I'm going to ask that everyone that supports this channel just trust in me. If you have a question, if you hear something, and you want the truth, just ask me. I have my phone number up. I take calls all the time. I try to be as open and honest as possible on this channel by literally videotaping everything I do, even the oopsies, you know what I mean? But sometimes, it just isn't going to stop people from spreading lies and rumors. So if you hear something, maybe it doesn't sound true, go ahead and check in with me, and I'll do my best to tell you the truth and provide any evidence that I can to support that. And like I said, just if you see people trash talking me or my kennel or my channel, just ignore them and just recognize that there are always going to be negative people in the world that are going to try to take people down. They're going to spread blatant lies and misinformation. It's very common. I've seen it more times than I can count. Unfortunately, I'm just the flavor of the week. Next week, it'll be somebody else, because that's what those people do. They just constantly tear people down. So just don't waste your time with it. Let it go. Understand that in the dog world, even people that are unstable can have pretty high positions of power within the community, which really isn't saying much. It's not like this is the government or anything. But just keep that in mind. I do appreciate it. I've seen your guys' comments. I do appreciate your support. I really do. But I just hate seeing you guys get attacked. And I don't want you to have to deal with that. I don't want you to have a bad day or be in any way upset because some horrible people with nothing better to do than talk crap online decided that I was their flavor of the week. So just, don't waste your time with it. I know what's going on. I'm choosing not to validate it. It's just one of those things where I feel like it's better not to give attention to it. So that's my word of advice. And I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk at you later. Bye.